All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fellow trash talkers. Whatever time you're tuning in, I'm glad to have you on board once again. You're listening to Trash Talk with D Bork, and I'm your host, Dave Bork. It is Thursday, the 11th of September, 2025. This is episode number 64 of our NFL pod. Week 1 is over with. We're moving forward to week 2, but before we do that, we do have to recap all the action from week 1. We all know that we're going to feature that Baltimore Ravens-Buffalo Bills matchup pretty heavily. That was absolutely outrageous. Seriously, is this the year that Buffalo get it done? Who knows? There were plenty of other cracking contests that we're going to talk through in this episode. We will also take out some trash from week 1. Knew I wasn't high on the Miami Dolphins, but boy, oh boy. We've also got plenty of questions that have come through for question time at Trash Talk with D-Bork on Insta and TikTok. Thank you once again for sending those through. And wearing a hoodie today for the singlet tan question that came through. DJ, absolute comedian. And then we'll look at some best bets for week 2. Recap those from week 1 as well. Yes, for the singlet tan reference, I was in Fiji over the last week, which is why we had to bring the episode forward a couple of weeks ago, previewing week 1 action. So, yeah, back to the amazing weather that is Sydney. Seriously. Fiji was outstanding. Sydney's been a monsoon since we landed back a couple of days ago. So, if there's ever a time to do this pod, it is the day before week 2 kicks off and the weather is absolutely horrific. So, let's start with a recap of week 1 of NFL action. And before we do, though, like and subscribe on YouTube. This episode will go live there sometime tonight at Trash Talk with D Bork and also on Apple and Spotify as always. So, let's talk about Dallas-Philly first. Banner night in Philly. Spit it out, though. I will spit it out in a sec, just like Jalen Carter did to start us off. Goodness me, that was probably one of the most disgusting things I think I've ever seen in my life, spitting on another player. And we will hit on a question that did come through to start this episode from @Rook Windsor, who lives over in the States. Professional rugby player at that, or now retired. We wanted to ask the question, should Dak Prescott have also copped a punishment similar to that of Jalen Carter, or not so much a suspension, but a punishment at that? Because I think a lot of us just saw Jalen Carter just spit at Dak. Spat on him. Disgusting. And I think the NFL set a disgusting precedent by also only suspending him for 1 game and giving him a slap on the wrist, $57,000 fine or whatever it was. When you're earning millions, honestly, what's $57,000? I don't think Dak should have been suspended as well. I think, he probably should have copped a mini fine or he probably had to get something, because Dak did come out after the game and say that he always, spits on the ground and, away from players. But, you see the footage of Dak actually spitting and looking up at Jalen Carter and saying, come on, come at me kind of thing. And he did. Guess he could have knocked his head off. But Jalen Carter spat on him, and was ejected immediately. Probably one of the dumbest plays I think I've ever seen in my life from someone. They were lucky to hold on and actually win that game in the first place. But in answering his question, should Dak have copped a punishment? Yes, I believe he should have for, I guess, inciting Jalen Carter to do that, and maybe spitting at the ground and looking at him, incited him to spit on him. But definitely not to the level of what Carter got. And I think Carter should have got multiple games, because now you're saying that you can just literally spit on anyone or punch someone in the head without their helmet on, and you're only getting 1 game. I think it's pretty disgusting. Unhygienic, that of Jalen Carter. But yeah, overall the game itself was pretty surprising. Philly eventually winning 24-20, and after that weather delay or rain delay, whatever it was, storm delay, it was an absolute fizzer. It was awful, and to be honest, I think Dallas probably deserved to win this one. They had a couple of big drops in this game, CeeDee Lamb in particular, which is really, really weird from him. Jake Ferguson, one in the end zone as well. I know he copped a hit pretty hard there, and they obviously got a flag for it, but that's just a catch that he usually makes. I think I don't think Philly were all that in this one, and we're not going to say that this isn't going to be a sign of things to come for Philly and a Super Bowl hangover in a way, because defensively they didn't look as great, and we know they lost plenty of bodies in the off-season, especially over the middle of the field, and they kind of got exposed there somewhat, and Javonte Williams also ran over them, which I don't think anyone saw that coming. 15 rushing attempts for 54 yards and a couple of tuds. To be honest with you, Miles Sanders, an ex-Philly running back, gutting him for 49 yards before he had a big fumble himself, which I guess probably won Philly the game. Philly overall weren't all that. Jalen Hurts, efficient. 19 of 23 for 152. Also had 14 rushing yards for 62 and 2 tuds as well to boot for him. But Saquon was surprisingly held in check, and this is a Dallas team that got ran all over last season. They kind of only held him to 60 rushing yards, did have a touchdown, had 24 receiving yards through the air on 4 catches. But outside of those 2 guys, and as we know, I guess Philly's offense does run around Saquon and Jalen Hurts, but A.J. Brown ghosted. He had a late catch for 8 receiving yards. I think there's a lot of fantasy football players, or owners out there, I should say, of A.J. Brown that are scratching their head saying, what is going on? Is he injured, or did they just simply not look for him at all? That was weird. Anyway, just a weird game in general. Spit it out. Week 2, Philly do travel to Kansas City, which is going to be an absolute belter. Super Bowl rematch. Dallas play host to the New York Giants. Can't wait for that one. Speaking of Kansas City, up against the Los Angeles Chargers in Brazil. Let's talk about Super Bowl hangovers. Boy, oh boy. 27-21 victors, the Los Angeles Chargers. They did welcome back Keenan Allen back into that rotation, and it's almost like Keenan Allen never should have left. He was brilliant. Justin Herbert was brilliant though. He ended the game on that 19-yard run, game winner at that. And, usually more often than not, when the Chiefs have anyone at 3rd and long, it was 3rd and 15, they're getting that ball back. And I think we've all seen the movie before. The Chiefs get that stop. Patrick Mahomes drives down the field to eventually win the game. But that didn't happen. Justin Herbert went 25 of 34 for 318, 3 touchdowns, 18 receptions between, I guess if you want to call it now, the big 3 at the Chargers, because, let's be real, it was only ever Ladd McConkey last year and a little bit of Will Dissly here and there. But Ladd, Quentin Johnston, and like I said, the returning Keenan Allen were brilliant. Quentin Johnston had 5 catches for 79, 2 touchdowns. Keenan Allen, 7 for 68 and a touchdown himself. Amarian Hampton in his debut, tough sledding, but this Chiefs D-line is actually pretty tough. So he had 15 on 48 for him. I think there's bigger things to come for Amarian Hampton, and if he's already given himself that RB1 status, maybe Najee Harris is kind of still working his way back from that injury. Not exactly the worst running back duo you can have. So, very impressive start for the Chargers. Mahomes obviously lost Xavier Worthy on that opening drive. We've all seen the podcast of how happy Taylor Swift was when the Chiefs drafted Xavier Worthy. There's plenty of jokes out there that Travis Kelce actually took Xavier Worthy out on purpose for that, but that was a big loss for the Chiefs, losing Xavier Worthy there. Mahomes finished 24 of 39 for 258 and a tud. Got sacked a couple of times. Did have plenty on the ground too. 57 rushing yards and also a touchdown to boot. But someone who may capitalise, I guess, on the loss of Xavier Worthy, he probably will play next week, but if he is somewhat underdone a little bit, is Hollywood Brown. Is this the return of Hollywood Brown, the reason why the Chiefs went after him in the first place? 10 catches for 99. Travis Kelce, 2 for 47 and a tud. Had a big drop, though, on that crossing route. And that's usually one that he just walks in for a touchdown. We've seen it for many, many years now of Mahomes and Kelce just dominating the league, especially when they get inside that 5 or 10. It's just all Travis. We were very high on Travis Kelce to score a touchdown at that plus 160 mark, so that was nice. But yeah, a weird drop. weird game overall. Wasn't really the Kansas City Chiefs where we've known for a long time now. But this also could be a changing of the guard to the AFC West. I'm not going to rule them out. Not going to rule them out for the first week at all. But big win for the Chargers nonetheless. The Chargers take on Las Vegas, Monday Night Footy, doubleheader at that. And obviously, like we said, the Chiefs are taking on the Philadelphia Eagles in week 2. Divisional rivalry that went down, the NFC South, Tampa Bay 23-20 over the Atlanta Falcons. Younghoe Koo missing that game-tying field goal attempt. And this is something that Koo lived for last season, nailing field goals to either win or tie games late in the piece. And I guess that's how Atlanta was surviving on a lot of their games, winning. So that was a rare miss from him, and he absolutely shanked it. Cost me in fantasy too. That wasn't really cool. But Michael Penix, though, does look like a guy who's not afraid at the moment and can air it out for this Atlanta Falcons team. Has Kyle Pitts fantasy owners happy too. We know we featured him on our Sunday Funday player prop parlay. Unfortunately, didn't win there, but did win on the Kyle Pitts leg, which had a lot of subscribers laughing at me for even placing him in that, but he cleared that pretty easy. Someone who cleared a lot easy in that matchup was Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver, rookie for Tampa Bay, who's going to get a lot more appeal, especially without Chris Godwin in this lineup. He was an absolute stud at Ohio State, and he was brilliant in the first week as well. 4 catches for 67 and 2 tuds. So I don't think Baker Mayfield's without weapons here, even with Godwin missing. When you can have someone like him and Mike Evans, who was, I don't know, you could say he was blanketed just for how good that he is. He still had a serviceable enough day. But this Tampa team is legit. I think they can make some strides this season. I think they'll win the NFC South. They're really only contending with Atlanta anyway, and now you've got a massive win on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. I think it's huge. A guy that was also high on a lot of people's lists this year is Bijan Robinson. He was brilliant through the air, but just couldn't get anything going on the ground. So they'll need a lot more from him. He only had 24 rushing yards, did have 100 through the air and a tud on 6 catches. So for Atlanta to be successful, we know that Penix can find him on that screen game a lot. But they need him to get going in the run game because Tyler Algier was also held in check against Tampa too. So, if Atlanta need to be successful, they need to keep their offense on the field for starters because their defense can't really stop a whole lot. And they held Baker in check for enough, still couldn't get a win. So, not good enough. Another divisional rivalry, if you want to call it that, was the Cincinnati Bengals defeating the Cleveland Browns 17-16. That was ugly. They'll take it. After losing week 1 last season to the New England Patriots. To win this one, maybe you just shrug it off and say thank goodness for that and let's move on because Joe Burrow was not good, 14-23 for a touchdown, got sacked a few times as well. This Bengals offensive line is just a complete and utter mess. We know how bad they are defensively because Joe Flacco was still able to throw it all over them. Joe Flacco just loves to air it out as it is anyway, but when you're getting it aired out against a 55-year-old like Joe, it's not exactly all that enticing. We know the Cleveland Browns aren't going to be in for a whole lot of wins this season, and I just think you move on from this game and get a whole lot better because you're taking on a much better opponent in week 2 for the Cincinnati Bengals up against the Jacksonville Jags, which is, I'm pretty high on the Jags this year. Cleveland travel to Baltimore, they are not going to be happy. I feel for the Browns this week. Pittsburgh, we thought it was going to be ugly, but this game actually had some points. It was pretty entertaining. 34-32 victors against the New York Jets. Tough one if you're a Jets fan because I feel like they were the better team. And I think a lot of Jets fans are actually wondering where the hell was this from Aaron Rodgers. 22 of 30 for 244, 4 touchdowns. Did get sacked 4 times. They saw that a whole lot in Jets colours. Chris Boswell, though, I've got him in a couple of leagues just because I know this guy's leg. They used to call Greg the Leg or Legatron, whatever they used to call him. Chris Boswell doesn't get the respect he deserves. 60-yard bomb to win that one with a minute to play, 34-32. Victors there. DK Metcalf had 4 catches for 83. Did get out caught, if you want to call it that, from Jonnu Smith, who had 5. We know Artie Smith does love Jonnu, and I love that fit for them as well. I think he can overtake Pat Frymouth in a way at tight end, but they use Jono a lot in that screen game to kind of give him the 10 to 15 yard burst. And they'll be able to get that out of him for sure. Aaron Rodgers did spread the love around to everyone, so this isn't really a Pittsburgh team that has that guy. I think they want it to be DK Metcalf, but they've got more than enough pieces around him to kind of spread it around. It's just their running game isn't really all that, so... Well, not right now anyway. It's either Caleb Johnson or Jalen Warren, and they didn't really give him a whole lot. Justin Fields, up against his former team, had himself a day out, and like I said, deserved to win. 16 to 22 for 218 and a touchdown. Also had 48 on the ground and 2 touchdowns himself. So yeah, he did enough to knock off his former unit. Just pretty unlucky, I guess, in the end. Breece Hall, which was the Breece Hall that we imagined it to be with Aaron Rodgers, but also... probably helps him a little bit more having a dual threat quarterback that can open things up for him. 107 on the ground. And look, I think this is a Jets team that's going to surprise a few people this year. They definitely have the ability to win some games. Defensively, that's not the Jets. And Aaron Glenn's going to fix that. Copping 34 against Pittsburgh isn't great with the team that's coming in to New York next week, which is the Buffalo Bills. I know it's a division rivalry matchup there as well. I think the Jets are just hoping the Bills are a bit hung up on what happened for them in the primetime slot, because maybe they're not going to be super focused, and that's something that the Jets can capitalize on. But if you're going to play defense like that, I think Josh Allen could have himself a day, especially if Jimmy Cook, currently questionable. Pittsburgh play host to Seattle in week 2. Can't see that being super exciting. Said that last week, though. The latest slate, Denver, very, very, very lucky to knock off the Tennessee Titans 20-12. I knew this thing would be tight, and this was one of our best plays, which was the +8 for the Titans. So we're not going to take pushes into our best bets record or whatnot, so we'll kind of wipe that clean from the slate. But it's definitely a game that Tennessee should have easily covered outright. Plenty of turnovers from Denver. Bo Nix threw 2 picks. They also had 2 fumbles as well. And Tennessee just simply couldn't capitalize on it. Cam Ward went 12 of 28 for 112. Got sacked 6 times. Our offensive line is obviously a work in progress. And Cam Ward's someone that you want to protect. He's someone that does have a very, very quick release and an absolute rocket of an arm. And there were a couple of big drops in this one. Calvin Ridley had a big one late, Chiggy Okonkwo as well. But at the end of the day, not many people thought that Tennessee were even going to be in this contest in the first place. And when we turned the ball over on Denver at 13-12 to get the ball back just over the halfway line and in field goal range, again, only kicking field goals. But Cam Ward got sacked a couple of times there to knock us out of range, and right there and then, I think I knew that match was all over Red Rover. Next drive comes down, RJ Harvey busts one loose, and they go on to lose the game. But Tennessee still had the ball late in that game to potentially get a win against a team that I believe is going to be contending for an AFC, at least a playoff spot for the Denver Broncos. So I'm not overly concerned at that. I think you're only going to get better after performance like that with Cam Ward working with his receiving room. Calvin Ridley's too good of a receiver to have the drops that he was having in that game. And I think we're going to see a lot more progression from Cam Ward to wait a little bit, to let their guy make their run and then go. So I am not putting anything on this kid. I think he's going to be just fine, and far better hopes than what I saw out of our former quarterback last year. Bo Nix, though, I think he'd be disappointed with week 1, even though they got that win. Kind of similar to Cincy, I guess. You kind of just brush this one off. He went 25 of 40 for 176 and a tud, but like I said, 2 picks against a Tennessee defense, which wasn't good last year. I think it's a lot better this year, obviously with Big Jeff and the D-line coming at him and Sweat. So again, I think Tennessee are going to be better than people expect, and I believe Denver are going to be far better than what they showed against the Tennessee Titans. Again, just limiting turnovers, and I think they'll be fine. Tennessee play host to the Rams in week 2, home opener. Cam Ward's home debut, which is going to be great. Denver traveling to the Indianapolis Colts. Daniel Jones, who would have thought? Niners, Hawks, Rams, Texans also in that late slate. Both games weren't thrilling, to say the least. Rams, Texans in particular, an absolute bludger of a game, but two very good defensive teams as well from what we've seen or known, I guess, or heard throughout the off-season. There was a question that did come through from at acero.d asking if this was another kind of form slump or sophomore slump 2.0 from CJ Stroud. And I'll answer that simply by saying this, is that CJ Stroud's had to overcome a lot of player turnover in his time in Houston. Obviously, he was brilliant in his rookie season. I think that caught a lot of people by surprise. Sophomore season still wasn't amazing, but still manages to get his team to the playoffs. Obviously, go down in week 2. But they lost Tank Dell. So another injury to Tank Dell. This season, when you look at it, obviously without Joe Mixon now too, so they're bringing in another running back or two with, Nick Chubb coming into play there, Dameon Pierce. I can't hate on CJ Stroud all that much. I still see it from him. I just don't think he's got enough with him right now to make things work. When you've only really got Nico Collins and your best other piece is probably Dalton Schultz, and your other receivers are the likes of Christian Kirk and Jaden Higgins, who's a young receiver too, they've got nothing when you come to think of it. So he's working with not a whole lot. When you go up against the Rams, holding them to 14 points, Matthew Stafford's got Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams to work with there, Kyron Williams, Breen in the backfield. You're only just barely losing a game. That's actually a pretty good result for the Houston Texans here in this one. The Niners-Hawks ones, look, Sam Darnold, late turnover in that one. Hit his offensive lineman coming through there. That's a tough loss for Seattle because I think they were the better team throughout. George Kittle obviously getting hurt, and now he's on IR too. Brock Purdy's also now hurt. So it's just a game that Seattle's going to rue, I think, losing that one, especially at home. That's a bad loss for them. They'll get better for it, but it's just a game that you've got to win, especially within the Division 2 at home. And in a game that's as ugly as that, they had plenty of chances to get that done. They couldn't get it done. One of the biggest divisional rivalry matchups and potential Super Bowl shake-up matchup was the Green Bay Packers against the Detroit Lions, 27-13. Did get a question that came through from Eric G86, who's a big Packers fan. Are the Detroit Lions dead? He was joking. But there are plenty of other questions that came through at J Moore, at Young_Gab, same deal, week 1 overreactions. This is probably one of the biggest week 1 overreaction. Are the Detroit Lions dead? No. They just had a very, very, very poor showing. And I said it last week, they lost their OC, they lost their DC, they've still got MCDC. It's their O-line that is a potential big, big problem. They had a couple of big losses in the offseason, obviously lost Frank Ragnow as well, which is huge. I think no one's ready to talk about that kind of stuff. So this is something that could take some time for Detroit to get that together. They got a very tough start to the season. You travel to Green Bay early, especially after coming off a week where they just acquired the services of Micah Parsons. So that can either be a massive distraction for Green Bay, or the whole city of Green Bay and that locker room is going to be amped and ready to go for this one. And they were. All credit to them. They completely blitzed them from start to finish. Jared Goff got sacked 4 times in this one. Again, offensive line protection, not all that. Jordan Love went 16-22 for 188, 2 tuds. They're not outstanding numbers. Josh Jacobs, 19 attempts for 66 and a tud. When you want to talk about Jared Goff, obviously getting sacked 4 times, he had 39 pass attempts. 31 of 39 for 225, a tud and a pick is not enough. Because they kind of get a little bit one-dimensional because they rely so heavily on that running game with Monty and Jahmyr Gibbs that if things don't really go according to plan, Detroit also don't really have that big of a wide receiving corps outside of Amon-Ra and maybe Sammy Laporta. That's it. Jameson Williams is a big player, home run hitter or nothing, right? So if Detroit simply do not have a running game, yes, this week run reaction could be that they are in a world of trouble. Plus 1,500 for them to win the Super Bowl, though, isn't the worst thing in the world to take right now. Because if they can get it together, especially with a big win this week against the Chicago Bears, then we could see this team moving in the right direction again. But again, that first 5-6 weeks is going to be big time for this team. Offensive line work is going to be huge. Green Bay, massive one this week against the Washington Commanders. And you think about it, they're not going to be facing a pocket passer in Jared Goff anymore. They're going to be facing arguably one of the most elusive players outside of probably Lamar Jackson, and that is Jaden Daniels. It's going to be a cracking game. Sunday Night Football, though, game of the year. I'll call it now. I can't see anything topping this. I know it's week one. This could also be a week one overreaction, but 41-40, Buffalo. Honestly, how on earth did that happen? They trailed 40-25 with 4.5 to play before Josh Allen just went, I am the MVP of this league already. Just put my name on that trophy once again. And did what he did. Because before all that, Derrick Henry's name may have been on that MVP trophy. This guy's aging like a fine wine. And so many silly people out there are blaming Derrick Henry for losing this game for Baltimore on that late game fumble. And Derrick Henry's come out and said, yeah, put that loss on me. Absolutely not. He had 169 rushing yards and 2 tuds before that. He was dominant. I absolutely love Derrick Henry, obviously being the Titans fan that I am. You can't not respect this guy's game. We went into last season when he went to Baltimore, everyone's like, oh, he's aged, he's washed, he's done. Oh, guy's an absolute animal. There's no way Baltimore should have lost that game. They completely butchered that, and you're lucky it's week one, and I think they can obviously right those wrongs in week 2. They play the Cleveland Browns, and I feel sorry for the Browns, but I know the Browns have given them problems in the past, but coming off something like that that's just happened to this team, boy oh boy. I think Derrick Henry may actually run over the top of Myles Garrett this week, which would be a sight to see, honestly. But Baltimore can't take this Browns team lightly because they've lost to them in the past, which you don't want to start a season 0-2. I know they started the season pretty slow last season, but they won't be starting the season 0-2 here. I don't want to say this now because I'm going to save it for the trash pile for what I will say about John Harbaugh, because he is a phenomenal head coach, but he had a shocker late in the piece there. Josh Allen, 33 of 46 for 394, 2 tuds. Also had 30 on the ground for 2 tuds as well. Lamar Jackson, 14 and 19 for 209, 2 tuds. Had 70 on the ground for a touchdown. Like, these are just video game numbers from both of them. No one, unless you're a fan of another team in the AFC, let's be real, will not want to see this as the AFC title game. Everyone wants to see this. In Buffalo, in Baltimore, doesn't matter. It's probably going to be in Buffalo because, like we said, they're in that terrible division. Schedule's pretty nice to them. And I think Baltimore are going to want to go back there and try and beat them, especially for that fan that was an absolute moron trying to knock out DeAndre Hopkins. Like, what a snatch that was from D-Hop. He's a special talent. But yeah, huge game. It's going to be hard to top that one this season for sure. We finished up with Minnesota, Chicago. I was actually at the airport in Fiji about to fly back home. So I'll be honest, I didn't really see a whole lot of this one. But from what I did see, Minnesota looked dead and buried. They were getting absolutely nothing going offensively, especially after that pick 6. They were down 17-6. It just looked done. Aaron Jones was getting absolutely nothing on the ground. Then Jordan Mason just got going. He got working, and then J.J. McCarthy started to figure some things out. J.J. McCarthy couldn't do anything in the first half. Everyone saw it. This is Ben Johnson's coaching debut. This is the new Bears. We're going to roll on to 1-0 before heading over to Detroit. Try and go 2-0. Nope. No, you did not. 27-24 victory for the Minnesota Vikings. That actually makes it look close in the end because the Bears were not really in it late in the contest. McCarthy went 13-20 for 143, 2 touchdowns. Did get sacked a few times. 2 for 25 on the ground for a touchdown as well. This is a big win for a kid in his first start after coming off a massive injury like he did last season. To come in and do that in Chicago in an in-season, divisional rivalry matchup is enormous. It's such a big win. Justin Jefferson was doing absolutely nothing before he got his tud, and that absolutely burned me in a fantasy league against at acero.d. If you're listening, buddy, that one's for you. Brutal. I'll remember that one anyway. Caleb Williams, on the Chicago side of things, he couldn't start any better. He started 9-9. He was absolutely lights out, and that's why I think a lot of people thought that the Chicago Bears were going to be a different version of the Chicago Bears. But then things turned south. He went 21-35, just over 200 in a tud, had 58 on the ground for a touchdown as well. But he had DJ Moore wide open, and overthrew him by about 20 yards. So we know that Caleb Williams clearly has the arm, but similar to what Cam Ward was like, to be honest with you, a lot were overthrown on his end, but Cam Ward's one season behind Caleb Williams. Progression's been made, but there's still those mistakes in his game from either overshooting or undershooting that he hasn't quite nailed just yet. And it's going to take time with Ben Johnson, but it's also, these are his mechanics as well. So outside of DJ Moore, though, Chicago went out and drafted Colston Loveland with that number 10 pick, and Tyler Warren was still on the board, and I was a huge Tyler Warren guy coming out of Penn State. I thought that definitely should have been the pick that they made, but not to say that this is a week one overreaction, but I'm going to say it was a mistake from the Chicago Bears drafting him over Tyler Warren, because we saw the week that Warren just had for Indianapolis. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of a shocker from them. Speaking of shockers, let's take out some trash. All right. How do we not start with the Miami Dolphins? My goodness. Just spoke about Indy doing what they did with Tyler Warren and Danny Dimes. Maybe he wasn't the problem at the Giants after all. But yeah, they got embarrassed. 33-8 in Indy. Tua, 14-23 for 114, one tud, 2 picks, got sacked a few times. They made Danny Dimes look like Peyton Manning back in the day of his Indianapolis Colts, 22-29 for 272 and a tud, 7 for 26 and 2 tuds on the ground. Just said it before, Tyler Warren, making Chicago look absolutely silly. So I'm throwing that Chicago front office in the trash. 7 for 76 from Tyler Warren. And if there's someone that loves using tight ends, we've said it before, it is Ben Johnson. He would have loved Tyler Warren. Not to say that Colston Loveland is dead and buried as a week one overreaction. Kind of like the Kansas City Chiefs being dead and buried as a week one overreaction. But yeah, that's a shocker. Miami play New England at home week 2. Turn that TV off. No thanks. I ain't watching that. That won't feature much on Red Zone, I don't think. The Giants, I don't think this is a week one overreaction. I just think that Russell Wilson is just not good. Not anymore anyway. In a somewhat favourable matchup against the Commanders in very, very good conditions. 21-6, he showed absolutely nothing. 17-37 for 168, got sacked a couple of times. Yes, he had 44 on the ground. But Malik Neighbors showed his frustration on the bench watching his former college teammate Jaden Daniels put on an absolute clinic. What Malik Neighbors would do to be in a Washington Commanders uniform right now. Someone who can help this New York Giants offense is probably QB3 right now, and that is Jackson Dart. I've said it before in our preseason shows. What's the point of playing Russell Wilson when this team's in for 3 or 4 wins throughout the course of the season? You've got a kid ready to go on the pine. Just play him. I'm not going to say that Russell Wilson's not going to give you a whole lot this week in a controlled environment in Dallas, because we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think they're making a mistake playing Russ over this kid. You nab this kid in the first round, I think you've got to start playing him. If Russ has a shocker in the first half against Dallas, what's the point? Brian Daboll knows he's going to be out of a job in the first place after this season anyway, why are you going to go out with Russ winning your 3 games? You're actually doing the franchise a favour. Getting them a better draft pick by winning less games. And last but not least, I am putting John Harbaugh in the trash. That punt was one of the worst decisions he has ever made in his career at Baltimore. Because this is a coach who is incredibly aggressive. Incredibly aggressive at all times. 4th and 2. The Buffalo Bills do not have a timeout. You have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson to get you 2 yards. And I know everyone says, oh, but if they got stopped, the Bills were in range to kick a field goal. Cool. They got back in range anyway by punting the ball because Josh Allen's an absolute freak. If you pick up those 2 yards, it is game over. You can't lose. Clock runs out. And he punted the ball. His defense couldn't stop anyone. That was awful. It was. He played everything right for everything bar that last 2.5 minutes. So he won't stay in the trash. Don't worry about that. But yeah, that's a bad loss for the Baltimore Ravens. We go now to more question time that I haven't hit on yet. At Trash Talk with D-Ball on Insta and TikTok. Thank you once again for sending those on through. At DJ Labinafied through in the comments section to my first player prop parlay video that I had over in Fiji. How's the singlet tan going? Like I said, I'm wearing a hoodie now. I do not have a singlet tan though. I'm very sun safe when it comes to these things. Sit under that umbrella and sip on my coconut that I had and a couple of Fiji golds going around too. But yeah, the singlet tan is not like the 2012 Sail Croatia tan that I had going on there because that was terrible. I've heard of sunscreen now. At young_Gab did have another question come through and wanted to talk top 3 college football mascots. And I will hit on some college football best bets in our NFL segment that we've got. Not necessarily playing them to the level that I'm playing the NFL ones at, but I will touch on them. There's only one mascot I need to name in college football for the top one. If you want to name someone who could be thereabouts, I guess you can put the Texas Longhorn one in there, especially the freaking thing that runs through the stadium. Like that's a fair mascot, and I wouldn't really want to be dealing with him. Brutus at Ohio State, you name him probably second, given the fact that I was at the national title game that Oregon played against Ohio State, so I saw enough of Brutus being very happy. But Buttles is the only answer to this. There is a top 1. He is top 1, 2, and 3. He is the best college football mascot for the Oregon Ducks, for the nation, that there is. Georgia Bulldog, because I love my Bulldogs too. But Puddles is the most entertaining mascot going around. Who doesn't love an Oregon mascot that's going to keep doing push-ups? He made me do them back in the day. Clearly don't do them anymore. But he does a push-up for every touchdown they score. And keeps accumulating. Unit. But yes, I'm a huge Oregon Ducks fan, huge Puddles fan. So, yeah. Love my Ducks. Great start to the season for them as well. Just quietly put it on Oklahoma State over the weekend. Win us a natty for once, please. All right, let's go now to NFL Week 2 preview. We start with Thursday Night Football. The Commanders going head-to-head against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau. 2 games in a row at Lambeau. At Eric G86, you're pretty lucky. A massive Thursday Night Footy contest. And I talked about this before, that the Packers aren't going up against a guy who's just going to stand in the pocket all game. Jaden Daniels moves around a lot. This is a team that plays with a lot of pace as well. So I think this one's going to be a highly entertaining game of footy. Green Bay can make it a little bit ugly, which probably suits them anyway, because Jordan Love doesn't have that many passing attempts. They wind the clock down a whole lot, especially play through Josh Jacobs too. You're going to need to do that to keep someone like Jaden Daniels off the field. A number of 3.5 kind of seems a touch big, because I actually have this teams in general, pretty evenly based. I don't think Lambeau's worth 3.5 just yet. This early on in the season with the weather and whatnot. Once it gets to that frozen tundra, then fair enough, it probably moves up to a 5. But I think Washington are going to be up for this one. They, in a way, overlooked the New York Giants. Obviously took care of business, so it didn't really matter. But they would have had their sights set on this one, and I think there's only a field goal in this match as it is. If I was to have a play, I'd probably be playing the Washington plus 3.5. I'm going to avoid it, though, and just sit back and enjoy and hope for a great game of footy. Jacksonville at Cincy. We'll go to the Monday card now. We'll talk through some early games. Joe Burrow up against Trevor Lawrence, two former number one picks going head-to-head. Both teams coming off a win. Jacksonville a lot easier against the Carolina Panthers. The Cincinnati just need to be better in this one. And I don't think the defensive line of Jacksonville is going to be coming at Joe Burrow with as much as what Cleveland's was. They don't really have that Myles Garrett. They do have a Hines Allen that could be coming at Joe. And given how bad, I guess, their offensive line is, that could be the case. But I think we're going to see a little bit more offensive footy from both teams. Jacksonville held Bryce Young to 18-35, got sacked once. I don't really want to be comparing all four number one picks against each other, with Bryce Young being the former of that, because Joe Burrow is just going to give you a lot more than what Bryce is going to give you. But there's just so much quality on the offensive side of the ball for both teams, where that wasn't so much the case, I guess, in Carolina, because you never really know what you're going to get with Carolina. They ended the season so well last season and didn't really start this season all that well. But when you've got both Jamar Chase, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase had a shocker in week one, just quietly. Week one overreaction, if we want to call it that again. Jamar Chase is done, and he shouldn't have been picked first in any fantasy league. I'll take that back by week two, because I think he's going to have himself a big game here, as will Chase Brown. You got Brian Thomas on the other side of the field, Travis Hunter as well. There's points in this contest for sure, especially if the weather's clear, which is exactly what it's meant to be. Cincinnati's home opener, they're going to be fired up for this one, especially losing their home opener last year. Giants at Cowboys. Jerry World. Be interesting to see the reception that Jerry cops when he's shown on his own Megatron to start proceedings. I don't think it's going to be pretty. But look, Dallas were very unlucky in week one. Spoke about it before. They were probably the better team overall, bar their drops that they made. But now Dallas is going to be without Deron Bland for quite some time, which could really hurt them. Just can Russell Wilson take advantage of that? Malik Neighbours is going to get free. It's just a matter of if Russ can actually hit him, if Russ survives the game. Kind of another game that I can see points being scored, because Dak loves to take advantage of lesser opponents. Dallas always usually did that anyway, especially when Dak was in the lineup. They couldn't play to the level of their opponent, when they go up against a superior team, but love to beat up on bad teams. I don't think the Giants are very good, but I think they're capable enough of scoring enough points for this game to probably have close to 50 points in this one. So that may be a play later in the show. Chicago at Detroit. Maybe Chicago were looking ahead to this game when they got up 17-6. Ben Johnson returns to Detroit. Be interesting to see the reception that Ben cops as well, because he was someone that led the Detroit Lions to a very successful path. Probably should have made a Super Bowl. Definitely should have won a Super Bowl last year. I know they had plenty of injuries, but I don't think he should be booed for leaving the Chicago Bears, because at the end of the day, he did stay an extra season to help the Detroit Lions get to their goal. He couldn't wait around for much longer. He's in a very good situation now in Chicago with a quarterback that he wants to develop into an MVP one day, and that is Caleb Williams. They have the offensive firepower to put up with Detroit here. DJ Moore, said it, Colson Loveland, Roma Dunze, Cole Kmet, who had a big catch against the Minnesota Vikings. I think he's going to continue to get used. DeAndre Swift as well, going up against his former team in Detroit. So there's plenty of formers going head-to-head against each other in this one. Probably think it should have been close enough to a prime time slot, or at least a later slot. Whatever, we're dealing with an early one over here in Sydney at 3 a.m. for this one. So given that Chicago's D-line is likely to come at Detroit and their reworked offensive line, I think Jared Goff's going to have to get rid of it early. So we're going to see a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot looking to make work of things against the Bears. Didn't see a whole lot out of TJ Hawkinson against the Bears. So what does that mean for Sam Laporta? watch this space, I think. But I think it's going to be a lot more of a Monroe St. Brown. And I do believe we're going to see some points in this contest too. There's some of these totals that have adjusted a little bit after underperformance in week 1. Controlled environments. I like the over here. I don't think either team's going to want to start 0-2. Chicago, the more likely team you'd think, would start 0-2. So this is a much bigger game for Detroit than what it is for Chicago. Detroit need this home opener after their last game at home was against the Washington Commanders, and they laid a complete egg in the playoffs. So, yeah, you'd believe that Detroit are going to be far too good here in this one, but it's a contest that's going to have some points. Rams at Tennessee. A lot of people probably wondering why on earth I'm talking about this game, but guess what? The Tennessee Titans are going to feature a little bit in this show. So, deal with it every week, regardless of how good or bad we are, likely to be bad. But there's a level of excitement about Cam Ward. It's his first home start. Again, this is a team that almost knocked off the Denver Broncos, a team that made the playoffs last season, a team that a lot of people are expecting to take a big jump this season with how good their defense is. And their defense is very good. The Rams' defense is also very good, but it's another kind of big-ish number for the Tennessee Titans at home. If this number can creep up to a 6, I'm taking a +6. I can't take the 5.5 now. I'm going to wait and see if there is a 6 that comes out there. But I think you're going to see a far better showing from Cam Ward at home. They're going up against a Rams team who doesn't really have a fan base that travels a whole lot. You know, if they were going up against Kansas City or Philadelphia, traveling fan bases that can cause a whole lot of noise for Cam Ward to deal with, I don't think he's going to have that to deal with at home this week. I think Tennessee are a legitimate shot to potentially upset the Los Angeles Rams. As high on the Rams that I am, Tennessee at that +200 or +215 that you can get out there. If it doesn't get to 6, I'm probably just taking the money line on a smaller play for that. It's not going to make our best plays, but I think it's the value play that you can possibly find out there for week 2. Outside of those games in the early window, you got the Pats up against Miami in Miami. Ugly, no thanks. The Niners traveling to New Orleans. Plenty of injury news about the Niners, obviously with Brock Purdy being out now. Georgie Kittle being underdone. Oh, he's out now for quite some time, obviously on IR. So there's an opportunity for the Saints to actually cause an upset. Probably couldn't take a +3. I mean, it's Mac Jones going up against Spencer Rattler. It's another one of those no thanks. Buffalo traveling to the Jets. Josh Allen up against Justin Fields. Both quarterbacks can use their legs. Jimmy Cook currently questionable, probably likely to play. But Buffalo, again, like I said, may potentially overlook this one for what they just overcame against the Baltimore Ravens. I'm not saying the Jets are going to win, but they're good enough to win. They showed that. Seattle travel to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's home opener. You're likely going to side with Pittsburgh. That building's just going to be rocking. There'll be plenty of terrible towers waving. So I'd be siding with Pittsburgh in that one. Late window games, not overly exciting, bar one. Carolina travel to Arizona. Denver travel to Indy. Week 1 overreaction. Danny Dimes MVP. No. But if they beat the Denver Broncos, he may be signed to a max extension at this point. I think Denver's got to come out on top here, right their wrongs for, the amount of turnovers they had against the Tennessee Titans and knock off the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think the Colts are going to have it as easy as what they had against the Miami Dolphins. Denver obviously favored by 2 points. I don't think that's enough. I think Denver are a touchdown or better team against the Indianapolis Colts. So they just need to fix up a couple of things and just simply not turn the ball over, let's be honest, because their defense is by far and away one of the best in the league and a lot better than what Miami's is. So, yeah, Indy won't be scoring 33 points this week. Super Bowl rematch. Philadelphia traveling to Kansas City. I've said this a few times now that Patrick Mahomes as an underdog is almost a must back. He is 12-2 as an underdog. A home underdog now, you can still get plus 100 or even money about the Kansas City Chiefs knocking off the Philadelphia Eagles. And I know, offensively speaking, the Eagles are probably a better unit right now. But this is a Chiefs team coming off a Super Bowl loss, coming off a we'll call it embarrassing Brazil loss as well, or an un-Chiefs-like performance. Give me Andy Reid in this spot, especially without someone who spat on Dak Prescott, Jalen Carter being suspended for this game. I like the Chiefs. Chiefs at home. Home opener. That building is going to be going crazy. Chiefs are not starting 0-2. They are knocking off the Philadelphia Eagles here in week 2. Philly were not good against Dallas. Not good enough anyway. Like I said, they probably should have lost the game. They were so ill-disciplined. And if you do that in Kansas City, and we know the Chiefs do get plenty of love from those officials, well, I think this is the spot to take the Chiefs. Sunday Night Football, Atlanta at Minnesota. Not overly exciting, but it is a game that we see JJ McCarthy make his home debut, and I think a lot of Minnesota fans are going to be loving the level of play and heart shown from this kid. Michael Penix as well. You get to see him on the road. I think there's some points in this one. Again, though, they need Bijan Robinson to be a whole lot better on the ground because you're simply just not going to win footy if you can't run the ball and you make it one-dimensional against a team or defensive unit as good as what the Minnesota Vikings can be. Doubleheader on Monday Night Football. Tampa Bay at Houston. I know we're asked before about CJ Stroud's form slump. Tampa at the plus 125, 126 mark against Houston here seems the more appealing play, just given that Houston quite simply don't really have all that much offensively right now. Yes, they've got a good defense. They need to make things very, very difficult on Baker. But I just think Tampa's the play here, if I'm going to be taking a side there. Chargers at Vegas. Vegas winning one in week 1 against the New England Patriots, beating Braves in that home opener there for him. I think there's going to be a good contest. You know, you can get the Chargers right now, the minus 3.5. Gino will want to show a lot of Las Vegas Raiders fans, and they're definitely going to have the home support here. I know LA's not far from there, but the Chargers don't really have that traveling fan base. Vegas is going to be loud. It's going to be rocking. Just sit back and actually enjoy that game of footy. I think Brock Bowers could be one to watch in this one again. I've said it before that the Chargers' middle isn't all that. And I think Travis Kelce could have had a whole lot more if he actually woke up a little bit. Didn't have a drop or two that he had in that one. So I think Bowers will continue to show that he is the elite of the elite at the tight end position. And Vegas could potentially be 2-0. I don't think a lot of people would have had that on their bingo card at the start of the season. Either way, it's going to be a great game of footy to watch. Double headers on Monday Night Footy, I don't love, but at least it's not an overlapping Monday Night Footy card that we'll eventually have. And yeah, I hate that kind of stuff. Anyway, let's go now some best bets. Try to find some winners for week 2. Okay, so week 1 we went 1-2, obviously with a push. We had the Detroit Lions, obviously no good there. Philadelphia on the minus 7.5. Did get a good move for us. Moved to 8.5, didn't cover. Jets plus 3, that was our winner. And then obviously the push of the Tennessee Titans. So didn't have any love there. Before I move on to NFL best bets, I'll just name some for the college footy. Play these however you wish. If you want to parlay them, do whatever you want. There's enough of them there that I've got on my card. Oregon minus 27.5 at Northwestern. You got Texas Tech minus 23.5 against Oregon State. That's one of my better ones. This is my best, I'd say, this week for college footy. Arkansas Ole Miss over 60.5. I know a lot of people think, wow, that's a lot of points. For those of you out there that don't really follow college a whole lot, these are two offenses that can put some points on the board. So take the over 60.5. Alabama minus the 20.5 against Wisconsin. I know they were upset in week 1, but this team put 70-odd on the board in week 2, and I think they can do somewhat similar this week against Wisconsin. Florida plus the 7.5 against LSU at LSU. Yes, they were just defeated by South Florida, but they seem to be the world beaters right now, and Florida could have been looking ahead to this one this week. So 7.5 is a bit there. South Carolina Vandy over the 48.5. Lenora Sellers and America's quarterback, as everyone calls him in Vandy, I think there's some points in that one. Diego Pavia can get him up. And last but not least, I'll take Notre Dame, Texas A&M under the 49.5. So yes, there's plenty out there. Play them how you wish. NFL though, that's what everyone's here for, right? Plenty of totals this week. I know we kind of played at lines a whole lot last week, but we're going with totals this week. And one head-to-head. And I think we all know who that head-to-head is. That is the Kansas City Chiefs on the money line to knock off the Philadelphia Eagles. So starting with that, we will take some early overs action here. Controlled environments. We're taking the over 46.5 Detroit, Chicago. The over 44.5 Dallas Giants. And the only way that's going under is if Russell Wilson cannot keep up. Over 49, Cincinnati, Jacksonville. And last but not least, Sunday night footy. Over 44.5, Minnesota, Atlanta. As is always the case, there could be plenty more plays out there. And if there is, I'll post them on my stories at Trash Talker D-Balk on Insta and TikTok. You'll also have our player prop parlays out there. Sunday Fun Day. We had no luck in week 1, unfortunately. We had that Xavier Worthy injury kind of start us off in Brazil. Wasn't all that. I'm pretty unlucky in the Dallas one because Ferguson dropped that one in the end zone. That was tough. And then Sunday Fun Day was no good. But again, I'm back. I'm settled. I'm not on holidays anymore. I was on vacation mode there, but I'm back. Trash Talkers trying to get us some winners and keep us entertained for week 2 of the NFL season. I can't wait. I'm glad it is back, and I'll be back at you next week, same time. This has been Trash Talker D-Balk.